You guys could be
Yeah.
brothers, man. We leave at the same time every morning, and I'm like, dude, he looks just like Jovan. He always telling me, he's like, man, I like those shoes.
You are listening to Digging In Podcast, presented by Rooted Wealth Advisors.
Welcome back to another new episode here in the Digging In Podcast. We have our repeat guest sitting in the seat, Jovan Marshall. Man, I appreciate you taking, so a little bit of time, to sit down with me and chat a little bit further. I think first and foremost, today what I want to talk about is kind of this initiative, right, that you've put forth here at Rooted Wealth Advisors when it comes to, legacy, life insurance planning, long-term care planning. So real quick, maybe just couple minutes, like, what is this initiative? How did it start? And kind of where do you see this going in the future?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, here at Rooted, we are a holistic company. So when it comes down to fully servicing our clients, protection planning, I believe, has to be a piece of that puzzle. We do much more than just help with their finances and help with, investment strategies. So protection planning, life insurance, long-term care planning has to be a piece of that puzzle. And I'm starting an initiative to make sure that we get in contact with all of our clients just to make sure that there's no gaps. Because we want to make sure that all of our clients are fully taken care of.
Yeah, we want to make sure that those comprehensive pieces are in place. And I will be the first one to admit, we're so focused on retirement planning in terms of the income, the investments, and the taxes, right? We're so focused on those three pieces that, at least I say this personally, we've missed, right, the long-term care, right, the protective pieces in terms of, hey, if something happened to your spouse, yourself, how is your family taken care of?
Yeah.
And not because it's not extremely important, we were just so focused on those pieces. And frankly, man, as time has gone on, I've been doing this for almost a decade, which is crazy.
You look so young.
Yeah. Me and Joe were just talking about that. But isn't that, that's crazy. But now, like, I've seen it, right? I've seen these things happen, or, and it just becomes so much more real, and it becomes so much more raw, where, like, having you in this seat is so important for our clients.
Yeah.
So man, I'm really excited, right, to
Same.
see how you can help these people and really just kind of make this initiative happen. So I got a few questions to ask you,
Okay.
real quick. So, I think the first one, like, when does someone actually need life insurance?
Today. But the truth of the matter is, if you have folks that depend on your income, you need to definitely make sure that you are getting some life insurance. And at that point, it's no longer something that you can just kick down the road. It's really a responsibility. If you have family at home that you love, unfortunately, that emotional love isn't going to pay the mortgage if something was to happen to you today.
Yeah.
So it's really important to make sure that you have protection pieces in place.
Like, no one wants to think about that.
Yeah.
No one wants to think that's going to happen. But, like, for those odds, you got to make sure that they're protected. So you say kind of like, hey, the income, right? Want to make sure that the income can be supported, but, like, how do I know how much I need?
Well, I think one thing that most folks initially think is like, if I can just provide, my income times 10, I would say that's a good base, but there's so many other things we need to consider, like, what are the future goals? Do you have children that you want to put through college? Do you have a mortgage that needs to be paid off? And even when you think about that, like, one thing that I think folks also don't think about is 20 years down the road, inflation.
Yeah.
Like, these are things we need to be thinking about when we're putting together a comprehensive plan when it comes down to your legacy plan.
Yeah.
So,
Houses are triple. Everything's triple in
Yeah.
essence, if not more
Yeah.
in 20 years, which is hard to fathom. But yeah, $1 million today is not $1 million in 20 years.
That's right.
So no, I think those are all really good things. And even, like, just, if you got really young kids,
Yeah.
you're going to need a lot more versus if you got really, older kids. There's so many factors. But I think that's a good point. It's just a really high level method of this is how much coverage, we need. But I think frankly, they should have a conversation with you to determine that,
Absolutely.
right? Okay, that's what I
Absolutely.
figured. What do you think the biggest mistake people make when they do purchase a policy,
The
when they do get
biggest
life insurance?
mistake. Oh man, that's kind of a loaded question. I would say probably the biggest mistake is purchasing for price over the purpose.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Because a lot of times people might just go online and find the cheapest quote and click on that. But if you do that with a term policy, you may find yourself getting something that has horrible conversion, opportunities.
Yeah.
And when that happens, just say 20 years down the road or so, if you get sick, you may find yourself uninsurable because you have a terminal illness. And getting something that's going to fit the actual purpose, I think, is most important, man.
Yeah,
So
I like that.
when you just shop for price, a lot of times you may cause a bigger expense down the road.
Yeah, the way that I see it is purpose over price. I
Yeah,
like that.
absolutely.
Purpose over price. Okay. One of the questions that I had, but if you don't mind, I just want to give an example in terms of how life insurance, while really important from a protection aspect, can really play a major factor in strategic planning. And I've really ran into this too a couple times, right? So I've had a couple cases that have some sizable life insurance policies. And the way that those got started were really they had three goals. They had, long-term care, needs to protect themselves from. They wanted a death benefit in case something happened, but they wanted some cash value to potentially leverage in the future. And, now I've actually had this twice in the last 2 weeks where, this particular example, the gentleman, he has the opportunity to invest in this company, right? Really, good company, wanted to place about 100 grand with that company. And he was juggling with three different options: leveraging the cash value in his life insurance, just pulling straight cash from his bank account, or liquidating some investments facing some tax implications and less opportunity to move into that, investment that he had. Well, we immediately decided that liquidating the investments didn't make the most sense from a tax and opportunity perspective. So then we were juggling cash versus leverage of his life insurance. Come to find out, he could ultimately leverage that policy at a 0.9% interest rate. He never has to pay it back if he doesn't want to, versus his cash that was still getting a couple percent. And it became an immediate no-brainer. We actually had the opportunity. He could index that leverage and actually pay for it if he wanted to, but he liked the idea of that guaranteed 0.9%. That is an incredible leverage opportunity.
It is so amazing. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss, when it comes down to leveraging, when it comes down to tax saving strategies.
Yeah.
That sometimes those things are overlooked, which is why, it's important to come in and have a chat with us here, because we can definitely, shed some light on those things.
Yeah, man, dude, it kind of got me gassed up a little bit, or just fired up. I just think it's cool to really see, because that was several years of in the making to be able to deploy that and really see how it can work. I think there's a lot of negative connotations around specifically like permanent life insurance versus kind of the term or even the long-term care type life insurance policies. And I could see why, right? I think sometimes maybe it's more than what someone needs. But man, if you're someone that makes a good income, you're someone that has a decent amount of assets that you're looking to diversify, or you're someone that sees leverage as a benefit, man, I would definitely be having a conversation with Jovan and seeing like where can that fit in your puzzle, right? Where can that really fit? Because it can be a really great tool for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned tool, because a lot of times folks get online and search social media and they're saying, buy term and invest the rest, like IUL and whole life policies, those things are trash. Like, well, I'm thinking about tools. When you go to your toolbox,
Yeah.
you're not going to say, oh man, this hammer is far superior than a screwdriver. It really just depends on what you're building. You know what I mean? If you're going to be using screws or nails.
Yeah.
So it really just depends on what the purpose is and what the plan is to,
Exactly.
get something that fits you perfectly.
And there's pros and cons to that. And I think that's why it's so important to have those conversations with, not just Jovan, but, Rudy Wealth Advisors as a whole. Our advisors are all fiduciaries. And, we really just want to make sure that, whatever tool we're selecting is the best fit for you and your
Absolutely.
situation. So Jovan, man, I really appreciate you taking the time coming on this episode, talking a bit more, on our initiative. And I'm hopeful maybe by the end of the year, we can kind of circle back and discuss that a little bit further. Does that sound good?
That sounds great, man.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it.
Hey, if you want to have a conversation with Jovan, or you have questions maybe about your situation, give our office a call, 866-766-8332. And as always, we'll dig in soon.
This was Digging In Podcast, presented by Rooted Wealth Advisors.
That was great.